Well, it was a great win. Obviously, the kids played extremely well. We had adversity, which we talked about all through fall camp, that we would go through some adversity. I didn't know we'd go through quite as much as what we did in that first quarter, but we were kind of on our heels defensively and just couldn't get into sync offensively until John's big run. And then obviously from there, after that big play, gave our defense some life, and I think they got their feet underneath them a little bit, and then we played good football after that. We're back at work today. We've had lifting this morning. We've got meetings and practice this afternoon, and I can't remember the last time I've gone back-to-back on the road to start a season off. And so that's kind of, I talked to the captains yesterday, kind of our big focus right now is we've got to make sure and go back to work today, because we're going on the road to a Big Sky opponent. We're playing at night, place we've never been, and we've got to stay focused and stay sharp. So I'll take any questions.
What was the biggest thing you saw watching the tape that really stood out from the Iowa State game?
Our offensive line. You know, those guys, and we played 7, and that's what I thought we would. And we played, you know, everybody, you know, the 6th and 7th guy played a significant amount of snaps. It wasn't like 10 snaps or something, but how we got better as that game went on. I know we kind of wore on them probably a little bit with our offense, but they gelled really well throughout that game, and all of them played really well. We're going to do the same thing. We talked about it as a staff over the next few weeks. We're going to keep playing 7 guys and make sure that we have a comfort level with all those 7 guys before we get into conference.
Cooner? Who are the 7? You got the 5 starters of Cooner?
Then Cooner and Plankers. Yep.
What's the defensive line that stood out to you?
The guys in the interior held their own. Brian Schatz played really well. Nate Tangway played well. And Grant Morgan came in. We need to play Grant probably a little bit more. That was the one area we thought was a little lopsided as far as snaps. Brian and Nate played close to 50 snaps, and we need to get theirs closer to 40, 35, and probably give Grant a few more, especially if it's a game where they're throwing the football like Iowa State was. We need to get a few more fresh bodies there.
How's Mike Hardy? How's he doing?
Well, we'll find out more today. I think it's unlikely that he would play this week, but I think he was getting an MRI today. Hopefully we'll learn more this afternoon, but we're moving forward as if we would not have him this week.
You've got Brad Ambrosius listed there. It seemed like he really played well. What did you see out of him Saturday at Iowa State?
Well, he played last year as a freshman really sparingly, and that was probably good for him because he didn't have those first game jitters. He just understands our defense so much better this year, having been through all of last fall, going through game planning as opposed to being on the scouts, as well as this spring. I was really pleased with Brad, and so he'll get the start. But Alex Hahn's got to really step up his play, and we've got to get more snaps out of Alex so that we don't have to have Brad go for 50 plays.
What type of challenges does the night game on the road present to you?
Well, you're sitting around all day. You know, that's the thing that we don't do a lot at NDSU or really even in the Valley, because everybody plays in the afternoon. So just getting out there, getting our routine that we usually do on Friday, that won't change. But then on Saturday, just maybe having a couple extra meetings or an extra walkthrough. You don't want them laying around in bed all day. Kramer wouldn't let them do that anyway, but just to try not to peak too quickly, because we've got a long day ahead before we get on the bus to head to the stadium.
Do you expect to keep playing the 3 running backs? Obviously John getting the majority of the reps, but King and Chase kind of pretty even, or do you hope someone can maybe emerge there?
Well, we're going to play all 3 of them just like we've done these first 4 non-conference games, and then probably make some decisions. We would like to get both those kids, meaning Chase and King, close to 10 carries right now. And I didn't realize John had only had 17, but then you look at it, in the 2 long runs he had with the weather and the humidity, took a lot out of him. So, but no, we plan on playing all 3.
Watching Weber State, what do they do well? I know this is a program that's been in transition for a while. What do you have to stop on Saturday?
Well, it's it's tough. We're going into another situation where we're not sure of the coaching change. You know, their head coach is in his first year. Their coordinators are in their first year. Both coordinators came from Southern Utah, so you know, we're looking at a little bit of Southern Utah film. We're looking at a little bit of Utah film because that's where the head coach is from. You know, we're just not quite sure. Then we're also looking at Weber State film from last year to look at personnel because we really only have one game. So it's one of those things we talk about. We've got to be able to adapt and adjust both offensively and defensively to what we see because we're not quite sure what their identity is going to be.
There's a number of guys, Chris, who had been with the program really just haven't played in a meaningful game like that. How do you feel like a lot of those guys did, like Jeremy Kelly's of the world and those guys that just kind of came out and just played for the first time?
Well, we all know those guys are the key to our success this year. Nobody's going to say, how did you think Kyle Emanuel did on this stage? We knew what Kyle was going to do, or Colton, or Joe Haig, or Croc, or somebody like that. But, you know, the Jeremy Kellys, somebody like that. Esley Thornton playing every snap this game. I thought Esley played extremely well. Some of the Lucas Albers getting in the game. All those guys. Carson Wentz, you know, those kids, those are the guys that are going to determine our success throughout the season. And even some of those other role players that maybe only played 10, 15 snaps, they're going to get significant snaps as we get an injury or get fatigued. That's the important part for us over the next 3 weeks now, is to see how those guys progress and how they can help us when we get into conference play.
Yeah, Billy, is his coach? Is he okay? I know he left the game.
Yeah, he didn't get a concussion, but he had his bell rung a little bit. But I envision him being back, ready to go.
Is Hardy the only guy out there?
He's the only guy out.
Travel routine, Chris, that didn't change at all? I mean, no walkthrough in opposing stadiums or anything?
No, we didn't. Just the extra travel time, more than anything. And the fact that we didn't stay in Ames and stayed in Des Moines, I don't think you need to go and be on a surface. And you know, we're pretty regimented as far as what we have to get done prior to, you know, we had an 11 o'clock game as well in the morning, so we didn't want to have those kids up too late. But even in past year, prior to even coming here, I don't remember going to the stadium as frequently as it used to be 5 and 10 years ago.
Cramping and going down with injuries and your team staying strong late. What is Coach Kramer doing to get these kids ready? And are there anything you can see him do?
Well, he's doing a tremendous job. He and his staff are doing a great job throughout the summer. Our kids are prepared, you know, whether it's the conditioning part as well as the strength part. It's some of our double reps, some of the fact that there's not a lot of kids standing around during fall camp. You come out and see the kids at the end of practice, they're gassed on August 14th and August 18th and so on and so forth. That we don't condition a bunch at the end with running gassers and stuff, but just our tempo of practice and how many plays that we're getting in and utilizing everybody obviously helps. And then, you know, like I said on Saturday, give all the credit to Jim Kramer and his staff. You know, our kids hang in there in these tough games where the weather's a little bit warmer.
Boy, you think other people see these games where other teams are cramping and you're not? Are you getting calls?
I bet Jim is. You know, I bet Jim is. You know, and usually it's just that first game, maybe the second game you'd see it. No, I haven't received any calls on that, but I'm sure that Coach Kramer has.
Coach, the Villanova head coach said today the gap between the FCS and the FBS is as wide as it's ever been. Yet you guys just beat an FBS team for the 5th straight year. So what does that say about, again, is it individual programs maybe closer than, say, the whole division?
You know, I had that question raised to me today. I think in the next 3 years we're gonna see where it goes. No, let's see what happens this weekend as well. I mean, there's some marquee matchups again with FCS teams, and it's still how the timing of everything is important. You know, for us this year, playing Iowa State, they had all new defensive kids and they had a new offensive coordinator. That was to our advantage. Last year against Kansas State, all our veteran kids and a new quarterback. at K-State, that was to our advantage. I think, when it was Minnesota, wasn't that Jerry's first year? So, and same thing at Colorado State. I think that was their first year. So timing's been a big factor in that, and I know we've benefited from the timing.
What concerns do you have coming out of week one? Obviously, 8 penalties. I'm sure that's one thing you'd like to see come down, but just things that you say we really need to get better in this area.
Well, we have to improve each week. Complacency is the #1 thing, and I count on our older kids to not let that happen. We got whipped in special teams. Ben LeCompte was dynamite. He was really good, but we weren't very good with our effort was good. Don't get me wrong, our effort was really good by those guys, and we played a lot of young kids, but their athletes were much better than our athletes in space on punt defense, on kickoff and kickoff return. That's an area of emphasis that we talked about as a staff. We must upgrade because we can't lose. Now, if you guys recall, Ben kicked, I think, 4 of the 6 out of the end zone. There were some creases and there were some holes. Same thing, they had a big punt return against us, and there was a huge gap. We had a big punt return, and we didn't need to block the kid in the back, and we did. So special teams, we can't lose that battle. And Ben allowed us to stay even, as well as Adam. But we felt we kind of need to improve in that area quite a bit.
Is that the youngest area of your team where you're playing the most inexperienced guys on special teams?
Yeah, if you noticed, Kyle has always been on punt team. LJ's always been on punt team. Jordan Champion's always been on punt team. Christian Dudzik's always been on punt team. We took all those kids off and said we're going to go with these young guys. And Coach Palasek runs a punt. He believes in those kids. They just and once again, it wasn't an effort thing. We've got to do a better job with technique, and that's something that we're going to emphasize as soon as this afternoon.
Did you anticipate, too, Chris, you have all these new coaches and a lot, like you said, a lot of new players in the field. Did you anticipate maybe there'd be some growing pains in terms of just getting the plays in and getting everybody, the substitutions in a little bit quicker? Did you anticipate there might be some of that just because there's so many new pieces?
There was. In the first half, offensively, we weren't very good as far as the play clock. We got down too much and talked about it as a staff at halftime, talked about it throughout the first half, and I don't know if it was just, how they were being brought in. It was kind of maybe lethargic coming to the line of scrimmage, whatever it was, but we cleaned that up in the second half. Defensively, I think the biggest issue that we had on defense from the mechanics was me, and I told those guys that I got to keep quiet more, and I need to coach. If I'm going to coach after the series is over with, and I apologize to Matt. I wasn't fair to Matt, and he did a great job overcoming me. He really did, because I didn't do a very good job, and I told him I'll make sure and do a better job. 2 guys I want to mention, and you guys know it, but I think on August 18th, Travis Beck and Chase Morlock had knee surgery, and Travis Beck played every stinking snap. I think we took him out the last play or 2 plays, and he played man coverage on a slot receiver every snap. We played a lot of cover 2 that you guys saw, but we played a lot of man coverage, and that kid came off of a knee surgery 10 days, 12 days ago and played. Chase Morlock came off of a knee surgery and took one 60-some yards to the house and didn't miss a beat. Kudos to those 2 kids. That's hard, and those 2 kids were not going to be denied to play that football game. And so happy Bobby did a great job with his staff in the athletic training room getting those 2 kids ready. But those 2 guys, it shows you the toughness of those 2, and that's our football team. That's Bison football. You look at that and you say Chase Morlock and Travis Beck, what they went through to get on that field.
Pretty big weapon for you. Your thoughts on what he gives this team?
It was interesting. I told the team before the game, we talked about what we had to do offensively and defensively, and I said to Ben and Adam, you guys have to give us an advantage today. You're both basically 3-year starters. You need to be an impact player, no different than Kyle Emanuel does, no different than John Crockett does, or Colton Heagle, or whoever it may be. And I really challenged Ben to step up and change the field position for us. We have to be able to change field position, and he did a great job. And then you go with Adam Keller. He had hip surgery. in the off season, and went down and did an internship in Texas. So we didn't see him in all summer. He'd send me a little tiny thing on my phone showing him kicking a 30-yard field goal. I didn't know if he was really kicking a 15-yard field goal, but he had more pop to his leg, and he felt really good. And those two guys have to, with their experience, be impact guys for us.
Does Ben is there a certain mentality you like in him?
Yeah. He's kind of like Voigtlander was, If you told Ben to go line up at wide receiver and play every play a scout team, he'd do it because he's just a good athlete, a really good competitor, and he likes to be out there. And he gets frustrated with himself, but he's a competitive guy, and yeah, I do really like his mentality.
He's not as good a golfer as Voigtlander.
I'm sure he's not. He says he's pretty good, but I've seen his scorecard compared to Polasek's and mine.
Coach, is there anything you physically took from this game? Did you grab a ball? Did you grab a steel pylon? Anything like that for first win?
Nope. I gave my brother and dad and my two boys are on the sideline a big hug because they were down on the field, and I thought that was really cool to have those guys experience that with me. And then after the game, I had a lot of family and friends and just spending time. But no, I didn't.
You traveled quite a few less guys. I mean, you traveled quite a few guys, I think, right, for this game specifically?
We took 68 to Iowa State, and we'll roughly take close to the same to Weber. But then after that, we got to get into our conference of 60. 60. 60? Yep.
Are you going to travel at Easton State too?
We'd like to. He's one that we would like to.
Thoughts of why do you travel Easton State, I guess?
I think it's great for a quarterback. I really do. We see a lot of ability in him, and so for him to be able to see how Carson does things and how he handles himself will allow him to compete for the backup job when next year or this year, compete for the starting job when Carson leaves.
So if Carson would have stubbed his toe, who would have gone in?
Derek McGinnis would have gone in had he had his helmet go off. Yep.
Was Arga the only true freshman that played?
He was the only true freshman that played.
You still thinking about Allison?
Allison would be, if we lose a corner, we'd probably pull his red shirt. And Aaron Steidel is still on that bubble if something happened to a defensive tackle.